For more information on Ancient Dragon Zen Gate, please visit our website at wwwancientdragonorgposttypepodcastp14315. Our teachings are offered to the community through the generosity of our supporters. To make a donation online, please visit our website.
Banner, so it's kind of her to come up the road here to Chicago, as it were. Florence is also a long-time environmental activist. She was a professional botanist. She's been very involved in numbers of environmental action campaigns and knows a lot about conservation. Florence is probably best known as co-editor of a really wonderful, important book, The Hidden Lamp, which has, I think it's 100 stories of important women, or I don't know about important, wonderful women teachers in Buddhism, going back to Shakyamuni Buddha's time in India, in China, Korea, Japan, and even the United States. And in addition, that book has, it's a wonderful resource generally, but it has comments by modern American women teachers. So I highly recommend that book, The Hidden Lamp. And Florence has been here a number of times before and will be again, but I'm really happy to have her here tonight. Welcome, Florence.
Thank you, old friend Taigen. It's wonderful to be here again. I kind of feel like the whole Zoom room is old friends. I recognize, I think, most of you. So it's great to be with you again. And I hope you're enjoying this beautiful spring evening. I imagine up in Chicago, like here, the spring is accelerating like some kind of, I don't know what, fast forward movie or something like that. Every time I walk outside, there's more flowers. So hope you're enjoying it too. Tonight, what I'd like to talk about, the title that I sent into Taigen weeks ago was Only a Buddha and a Buddha, which is also the title of a well-known fascicle of Dogen. Many of you probably know that. And this talk will be about that fascicle and not about that fascicle. So it will touch upon it, but it's going to cover a lot of other territory over our time together. I'm going to get the clock here. There we go. So I want to start with a section from that fascicle. This is from an earlier translation than the most recent one. This is from Moon in a Dewdrop. Many of you may have this book. So the fascicle begins with some lines that are a kind of reflection from the Skillful Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And I'll just read that little paragraph, but then I'm going to skip to something else that I think sheds light on what I want to talk about tonight. So the fascicle begins saying, Buddha Dharma cannot be known by a person. For this reason, since olden times, no ordinary person has realized Buddha Dharma, so no practitioner of the lesser vehicles has mastered Buddha Dharma. Because it is realized by Buddhas alone, it is said, only a Buddha and a Buddha can thoroughly master it. A Buddha and a Buddha. And then I wanted to read this part, which is in the 6th part of this fascicle. All Buddhas of the 3 worlds have already practiced, attained the way, and completed realization. How should we understand that those Buddhas are practicing together with us? First of all, examine a Buddha's practice. A Buddha's practice is to practice in the same manner as the entire universe and all beings. If it is not practiced with all beings, it is not a Buddha's practice. This being so, all Buddhas from the moment of attaining realization realize and practice the way together with the entire universe and all beings. Do not think that Buddhas are other than you. Let me read that again. Do not think that Buddhas are other than you. According to this teaching, when all Buddhas of the three worlds arouse the thought of enlightenment and practice, they never exclude our body and mind. To doubt this is to slander the Buddhas of the three worlds. So no slandering. Some of the precepts. I think that there is a tendency in all of us, in our culture, to see the path as a kind of solitary, heroic journey, right? We're all familiar with Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. This is our idea of the spiritual path. If you close your eyes and hear the words spiritual path, do you see it like a whole bunch of people on that path? Or do you just see one solitary figure headed towards the peaks? Right? These are our images. But what if the path includes everything and everyone? That everyone and everything, including all the Buddhas of past, present, and future, as Dogen tells us, and remember to think of this otherwise is to slander the Buddhas, are actually with us, practicing with us. We are not separate from them. I think that so when I've been recently studying this fascicle, and I was really, really struck by this. Because you might have noticed that this practice is a challenging one, right? Life, actually, not just practice, life is a challenging one. And so if we also think that we are doing this all alone, essentially, like fundamentally, then it's really hard. And so what supports us in our practice? And when I read this section, I was just really struck by what would my practice be like if I believed this? That because the Buddhas make a vow, right, to practice and awaken, practice with and awaken all beings, how is it that I am not included in that? So are the Buddhas right with me as I practice? And what about the whole rest of the world, the mountains and rivers and the great earth, the plants and the trees? As that's a quote from the Old Woman's Relatives, the koan that I wrote about for the Hidden Lamp. Are they also practicing with us? So that's kind of the big view. And I just invite you in your own practice to explore this a bit. Like, how do I understand my practice, right? That's what we say. Our practice, my practice. You go in to see your teacher and he might say, or she might say to you, how is your practice? And you can say, well, it's with all Buddhas and the whole entire earth. She'll be so impressed. And I think that we can, now what I want to do is I just kind of want to bring this down out of that very kind of absolute realm into particulars. And one story that came to mind from my own life as I was thinking about this today is, oh my goodness, sorry, that's my mother trying to call me. See, I am practicing with all beings, including my mother. And I don't have a way to turn that off. Can you all hear it? Do you hear a little ringing? Yeah. Okay, so this could be interesting. She could call back. She has dementia, so she may call back many times. I'll see if I can get it off. Let me see. I think I can, though. Let's see. Okay, we'll try that. Hopefully that will make it go away. But she is practicing with me, obviously. And actually, it's pretty funny because what I was going to talk about is the idea of our lineage supporting us. So, of course, a lot of you are wearing rakusus. So you received lineage papers as part of your ceremonies of various kinds. And they, of course, it has the line, right, going all the way from the Buddha through all these different teachers, 90 some generations, and then to you, and then back up to the Buddha, right? It's in this wonderful circulation system. And years ago, I was doing a long retreat at Spirit Rock Meditation Center, a Vipassana retreat center in California, 2-month silent retreat. And they have this beautiful little building there that's a tiny octagonal hut. And inside the hut are photographs of the important teachers of the teachers at Spirit Rock. And they don't have such a strong sense of lineage. So like one teacher, and all this is true for us anyway, right? A lot of us have more than one teacher, although we might have one formal teacher who gave us the precepts. So for the teachers at Spirit Rock, there are many teachers, and they're from many different traditions. And I found myself really drawn to this little hut. And in fact, I took it upon myself to be the sweeper of the hut, because things would blow in leaves and stuff like that. And so every day I would go, and there was a broom there, and I would sweep it and spend time with these teachers. And it just really struck me, like viscerally, that the only reason that we have this beautiful practice, the Buddha Dharma, is because quite literally, somebody passed it on to somebody else, who passed it on to somebody else, who passed it on to somebody else, who then passed it to teachers that we encountered in whatever way we did, in a book or an actual human being. And those people inspired us to enter into the practice or to continue. And we are now also ancestors, right? Because we're practicing, we are inspiring people in our lives in various ways, no matter what our practice is. And we're the next link of keeping the Buddha Dharma literally alive. And of course, if for some reason there was all the practitioners disappeared and all we had were the books, it wouldn't be the same. I mean, I'm very inspired by Dogen, but, it's not the same as seeing a teacher move across the room. So that's one of the ways that the Buddhas support us, and this whole lineage supports us. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the way that the world supports us, right? I do this funny little thing with this Japan House here, which is a Japanese cultural center. On the first Friday of the month at 10 a.m., they do a live stream of me sitting for 15 minutes out in their garden. And that's all that happens. And it's actually wildly popular. People love it. And you'd think it might be a still image, right? We sit pretty still in Zazen, except like a leaf will fall down or there'll be a bird call or whatever. And I've been doing this. I did it all through the winter. And this last one, which I recorded a little early, this is the only one that won't be live because this Friday is my birthday and I'm going to be out of town. I decided I would, instead of starting in a sitting position, I would actually demonstrate the bowing to the cushion and bowing away. And I always think of that as, I think about it in different ways, but the way I talked about it on Friday is that, you're bowing to this great intention that runs through all beings to wake up. That's the bow to the cushion. And then the bow away is bowing to this vast world that's also practicing and helping, supporting you in waking up. So anyway, it was kind of sweet to share our bowing practice with whoever it is who tunes in to that little 15-minute moment. That is all a sort of introduction to what I really want to talk about today, which is spiritual friendship, which can be about teachers sometimes. I think I would put our relationship with teachers kind of under that umbrella of spiritual friendship, but I also think that it takes many forms and can be deeply supportive to our lives. So I want to open up this area of spiritual friendship for us and see where we go. And I'd like to begin. So I want to talk about it, how spiritual friendship, is there a difference between spiritual friendship and other kinds of friendship? How do you recognize that's what's going on in a relationship? And what it can mean for our practice in life. And I would like to dedicate this talk right now to all the people who are not in this shared space together, who have supported you in your practice, who have been your spiritual friends, whatever form that took. So this talk is dedicated to them, because you probably wouldn't be here without them. And I want to start with just a brief guided meditation to bring those others here with us. So please, if you would, close your eyes. Just feel your breath and body as you sit here. And bring to mind a person in your life who has been an inspiration and support to you on the path. This is ideally a person where the tangles are minimal, where there's a clear sense of this person as a spiritual teacher and benefactor. But not necessarily a formal teacher. Could be anybody in your life. Bring them right in front of you as clearly as you can in your mind's eye. See their face. This person can be living or passed away. Consider their gifts to you, their love for you. Now, I invite you to bring your attention to your heart. Feel what you feel there when you think of this person. If it feels right, you can offer your silent thanks or an inner bow to this person for their friendship and inspiration. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. And I just want to say at this point that I think that there are some people whose lives are such that perhaps no one came to mind when you did this practice, and that you might have to look a little deeper. One in the stories, in the Zen stories, some great teachers and students are together for decades, practicing together in the same monastery, and others for days or even moments. So if no one came to mind for you immediately, you might consider whether there's someone that you've encountered that maybe it wasn't for so long and has been that for you. But I think most of us can pretty easily contact feelings of gratitude. And isn't it quite remarkable that most of us have been blessed in some way by a person or maybe several people or even many people who have supported us in these ways. So I think that there's this funny thing, and I don't know what it is, but I think that we walk together with fellow travelers, very particular human beings where mysteriously we recognize them and they recognize us. And I would venture that for most of us at some point in our lives, this kind of friendship has been or is critical. A friendship where you are truly seen and where you know that you don't walk alone. This could be a friend, it could be a teacher, it could be a peer, somebody older or younger, somebody close to you, or as I said, someone you meet very briefly. It hardly matters. And there is actually a term for this kind of friendship from the Celtic Christian tradition as well. It's called anamkara. And John O'Donoghue, the poet, wrote about that and said, in the Celtic tradition, there is a beautiful understanding of love and friendship, the idea of soul love. The old Gaelic term for this is anamkara. Anam is the Gaelic word for soul, and kara is the word for friend. So anamkara is in the Celtic world, was the soul friend. In the early Celtic church, a person who acted as a teacher, companion, or spiritual guide was called an anamkara. It originally referred to someone to whom you confessed, revealing the hidden intimacies of your life. With the anamkara, you could share your innermost self, your mind, and your heart. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with teachings from early Buddhism about the Kalyanamitta. Kalyanamitta are the spiritual friends. And in some of the Theravadan traditions, teacher is also referred to as a Kalyanamitta, but it can also be a fellow practitioner as a spiritual friend. And this might be familiar to you from the suttas. Ananda, Buddha's attendant, had spent the day in solitude, and in the late afternoon, he came and told the Buddha that he had been meditating through the day and had had a great insight. He said, "It seems to me that half of the holy life is association with good and noble friends." Maybe you know what the Buddha said afterwards. The Buddha replied, "Not so, Ananda. Do not say that, Ananda. It is the whole of this holy life, this friendship, companionship, and association with the good." That's sometimes translated as Sangha, but I actually think it's powerful to hear it. This is, I think, a more formal translation, and to hear it to be about noble friends. And it's a koan, right? How could this be the whole of the holy life? Not something to just pass over lightly, to really consider, what does this mean? And is it related to only a Buddha and a Buddha? So one of the things about spiritual friendship that I have found in my life is that an ordinary friendship tends to rest on things like living in the same town, or shared experiences, or shared interests. But a spiritual friend often has a different quality. You might meet across really vast differences, actually, not necessarily similarities. One of my important spiritual friends was a woman whose name was Willie Cooper. And she was an elderly Lummi Indian woman to the Lummi Nation out in Washington State, who was married at 14 and had 9 living children, 13 pregnancies, and was deeply, deeply spiritual. Anything spiritual, she wanted to be part of it, whether it was a tent revival in the woods or practicing the ancient Siawan religion of the Lummi. And we loved each other, I swear, from the moment we met. And I was privileged to spend a number of years in association with her. And we just knew each other. my brother-in-law is Ugandan, and the same thing happened when we met for the first time. We could, even though his life experience and mine are as really radically different as two lives could be, still we recognize something. So I wanted to share a koan with you. And there's so much that could be said about this koan, and I really invite you to potentially explore it a little bit on your own as well. It's a little hard to find, and in fact, I don't know, Taigen, I could not, I've struggled with this before. I cannot find the original source of it. But it's sometimes called Tortoise Mountain Wakes Up. And it is from the kind of classic era of Chinese Zen, Chan. And it's about two friends, Shuifang and Yantu. And Shuifang became extremely famous as a Chan teacher. But at the time of this story, they were both students on pilgrimage. And this is a short version of the story. Yantu and Shuifang were snowed in on Tortoise Mountain. They were out on pilgrimage and got stuck in this little hut. Day after day, Yantu slept while Shuifang sat up and meditated. And here was the thing. Shuifang was the older of the two, but Yantu was kind of like a Zen prodigy. Like, he just got this stuff really fast. So all he's doing, he's just napping. And there's Shuifang, yeah, right? Sitting there, really intense. And finally, on the third day, Yantu sat up and said, "Get some sleep. What do you think you are, a roadside shrine?" Love that line. And Shuifang touched his chest and said, "My heart isn't at peace. I can't fool myself." And in the longer version of the story, Yantu asks Shuifang to tell him about his experiences. And he tells all these stories about meeting these different teachers and having, insights of various kinds. And it just goes kind of on and on. And finally, Yantu gave a great shout. He was famous for his shouts. And he said, "I'm going to do this. I have no idea what this will sound like on, Zoom. Ha! Don't you know that the family treasure doesn't come in through the gate?" He said, "Let the teaching flow out from your own breast to cover the sky and the earth." Shuifang was suddenly enlightened and cried out, and danced around, actually, in the longer version of the story. "Today, Tortoise Mountain has finally awakened." So here are two friends, just traveling together. And one, out of this great compassion, not a formal teaching relationship at all, the younger one, helps his friend to find freedom, helps his friend to finally be at peace in his heart. So I just love the palpable love between these two. And the beauty of this response, right? Not to be looking outside your own body and mind for awakening. And it's not like a little touchy-feely kind of comfortable love, right? It's kind of fierce. Sometimes what friends do to help us wake up is not sweet. It can be fierce. I can remember a long time ago, someone I was working with got mad at me and said, this was as a botanist, and said, "You are so arrogant." And it blew me away, because actually at that moment, I knew he was right. I was this young, arrogant thing, right? He'd been around for a long time doing work for the Forest Service, and I just thought I knew 10 times more than he did. It woke me up. So how do we wake each other up? And some of you may also know the story, and I'm watching the time here, I don't want to go too long, but the story of Buddha and his foster mother, Mahapajapati, who ended up being the founder of the order of nuns. And the Buddha kept telling her she wanted to ordain. And at that point, there was an order of monks, but not of nuns. And she kept asking, and he kept saying no. And finally, she led this huge group of women 100 miles on the roads. They shaved their own heads, they put on robes, and they walked to the Buddha, and they asked again, and he said no again. And said, woman, don't ask me anymore. And Ananda pulls him aside, his attendant, his like unenlightened attendant, right? And says, but wait a minute. I mean, she suckled you at her own breast, and aren't women just as capable of enlightenment as men? And Buddha's like, yeah, that's all true. And, well, maybe you should do this. And so the Buddha did. So there is a nunnery in Japan that does a ceremony every year thanking Ananda for helping to wake up the Buddha to something very important. I really can say for myself that I don't think I would be alive today without this kind of friendship. There were times in my life, especially as a young person, where I was walking the edge. I was not sure I wanted to be in this world. And there was one particular person who saw me, and that made all the difference. So just to remember to reach out to others who are on the path. And we are not walking this path alone, but you may know somebody or meet someone who thinks that they are walking alone. And if you reach out your hand, you might save a life. So let's keep it up and never forget what a gift it is to have that kind of connection. And I just want to close with a poem. It's by Sharon Olds, the poet Sharon Olds, and it's actually to another poet, Gabriel Hirsch. So in a way, this is kind of a poetic equivalent of Tortoise Mountain. Song to Gabriel Hirsch. We first met in your home, outside summer fire, inside Texas summer ice. I was wiped out by travel and illness, lying on a couch, which made me a good height for you to talk to. That I had a son with the same name as you struck you with wonder. Me too. One name, one label, two beings. We said to each other, I think, whatever came into our minds, put there by what the other had just said, as if we threw one by one, taking turns, those intensely dried paper flowers of my childhood into a glass of water and watched them uncurl fast, uneven, and bright, and tossed another. We were in the present moment so intensely in it, everything outside it took a step back out of the light, then another step back, and that was where we met. Next, years later, in that light, you were so intent, alert, alive, as if in the grip of a fierce brightness and moving around in it, quick in its grip. I wish I had been there last week to hear your best friend who had met you eye to eye in what in your childhood was the future talk of how extraordinary you were, my almost unknown dear, your mother's and father's dearest. You were wearing a cape that first day, a cloak of many colors, a cloud, your hand on the shoulder of the wild creatures of your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Florence, for your talk on spiritual friendship. We have time for discussion. If anyone has comments, questions, responses, please feel free.
Especially if you have a story of such a friend.
I'm sorry, Wade, maybe you could help me call on people.
Oh, okay. Don't see anybody raising their hand. Oh, please don't be shy. You all know each other. And me. Yes, Matt.
We'll just get it started. I don't want to unmute myself. My kids are watching cartoons in the backgrounds. I do have a story. The person who I had in mind when you were doing the guided meditation, one time she said, quit being so effing intellectual. I remember that moment, and that was actually a pretty pivotal moment in my practice. So that was a similar moment for me as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please.
I've been struck before by the lineage that you listed. This idea that the warm hand to warm hand transmission for the past 2,500 years is just kind of remarkable to think about. And that never, I feel like that's true in Christianity too, but when I was a practicing Christian, it never struck me that way. For whatever reason, I think Zen has an emphasis on it. And really it's kind of awe-inspiring. And it reminds me, you being a botanist, and Laurel as well will appreciate this. It reminds me of the natural world so much, that we only have the nature that we have because every generation has managed to produce another generation. And at no point did they just skip one. Did they just take a generation off? Because they wouldn't be around. So it's the transmission of the Dharma feels similar to me. It's kind of like the procreation of a species, the creating its own progeny. And in that way, it feels like very, very intimate, but also very fragile. I'm not making a point here, but that's what I have to say.
You are making a point. I think that's wonderful. And to really remember that we are the next generation. I imagine, I don't know this for sure, Teigen, but you'd give the second lineage paper now to the one of the women in the circle? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, we haven't done a lay ordination in a little while, but yes, I give I think I'm not sure if it's the Norman's version that we do. We chant. We have a chant of women ancestors as well, but yes, the circle of women.
I love that, because we have this kind of, in some ways very Confucian kind of hierarchy, not hierarchy, but, linear, somewhat magical and mythical, but linear version, right, that goes from the Buddha to us. We may not have all the names right, but we know this happened, right, one generation after another. But then for the women, it's you're in the middle, and it's circular. So it's like being embraced by all of the women's practice, because so many women are not able to formally give transmission to others. And yet their practice has also supported us and is, I think, more and more.
And yes, your book, Hidden Lamp, really shows how so many great women practitioners supported each other and even the men all through time. And so your book is such a treasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, there are a lot of stories of the women in just the way that Matt was talking about, or I was talking about, where they kind of punctured the arrogance and sureness of a monk or even a great teacher. And sometimes they're playing. Sometimes it's like the two of them are just like in that Sharon Olds poem. They're like tossing something back and forth in play, and it's kind of fierce play. It's like watching cats or dogs play. It's not. It's it's got a certain intensity to it. I love one. There's one where an old woman at the end of it, pushes Hakuin, right, the greatest Zen master of his time in Japan, and says, "I can see you're not enlightened yet." So I think laughter is also part of this. Do a whole separate thing on laughter. Laurel.
Thank you. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk. I have a story on a different topic that I wanted to tell you. So I moved last year, and after being in the same place for 25 years, and I had to get rid of a lot of books. And a few weeks ago, as I was finally getting around to rearrange my books and put them in order, I found that I had 2 copies of The Hidden Lamp. Mysteriously and miraculously, they multiplied, even though I had gotten rid of more than half of my books. and so a friend, and I gave it to a friend who wasn't sure that he wanted a copy enough to buy one for himself. And I recently heard from him that he was so happy to have it, and that it was his favorite book right now, and it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. He was somehow defended against it before he even opened it. And so it was just an odd mystery that maybe one day I'll figure out. But another person is benefiting from your work. So thank you from me and from my friend Stuart.
Thank you. You know, that book, the opening line to our preface to that book is, "This is a book of meetings." So again, back to this same, only a Buddha and a Buddha. We can't do it alone. And if you look at the koans, this is a really interesting way to look at the koans, is how much they are about, all of them, virtually all of them, about meetings. Taigen, do you have anything you want to add? Oh.
Yeah, just that I was just thinking as you said that it's also a book about intimacy. Mm-hmm. And how people become, as you said, you were talking about spiritual friends, and I'm going to try and remember this Celtic word you shared with us for Kalyana Mitra, or like it, avam kara. Is that right?
I'll write it in the chat. And there's actually a book. John O'Donoghue did a book on this.
Oh, anam with an N, kara. Mm-hmm. Okay, I heard it wrong. Part of this whole thing of teachers and students and students and students and teachers or whatever, practitioners talking together is, we meet in this, it's sort of unusual way. I mean, we have these formalities of how we talk to each other, and then we just sometimes there's an exchange out of, while sweeping or whatever. But there's a kind of, you were talking about sitting for 15 minutes on camera Friday mornings for where you live. And I think that's just lovely. And for people watching that, there's nothing said, but somehow, and this is true in Zendos too. I don't know if we can achieve this on a Zoom page, but we have to see. But I don't know, something about how we really get to know each other and ourselves. Anyway, there's something very sweet about this idea of spiritual friends, and so I appreciate your talking about it with us tonight. Go.
As I've been very insular during the pandemic, one of the realizations that came to me, I've been feeling regret over places where I haven't entered friendships fully. And one of the insights that came to me was that when I think that I'm not of value, I end up treating other people that they're not of value. Mm. I was wondering if you could say anything about that.
So this is in a situation where you feel that you are not valued by the other, and then you don't.
No. When I personally do not think I'm of value,
yes.
I don't enter, and then I devalue them.
Right.
In an odd way.
Yeah. I think I don't know if any of you ever read there was a psychoanalyst and poet whose name was R.D. Laing, and he wrote a book called Knots, Knots. And actually a lot of the book is about this and how we shy away from relationship, like these kind of double binds that we put ourselves in, right? We shy away from relationships because, I remember one thing is, I am so unworthy that someone who found me worthy is therefore unworthy. Mm-hmm. Right? I remember coming across this book as a teen, and it was just a revelation to me. And I think you're right that's the mirror, right? That then undervalues or takes away the value of the other. And honestly, I think the sort of antidote to that is to really turn completely towards them, right? Because ultimately it's not about you, right? It's about them. Who is this human being that is in front of me? And, I was just realizing there is something weird about giving this talk at the end of a year of pandemic, because I think for a lot of us, our friendship life or even just encounter life has narrowed so dramatically. One of my favorite serious games is riding the train, long train rides, and discovering who's on the train with me, which is just endlessly kind of serendipitous and magical. And I meet people I would just never, ever meet under any other circumstances. And of course, I did ride a train this year, but I was locked in a compartment the entire time. So I think, as we sort of re-enter maybe slowly, more ordinary interactions, perhaps we can be more open, maybe more appreciative of the preciousness of those encounters. I hope so.
I think what you say about our pandemic situation is really important, that this has been a really strange time, even for those of us who are not in great distress from medical or economic circumstances, or from facing racial injustice, or all the things that are going on. Just to be kind of in quarantine for a year, it's just, I'm feeling it more and more, as maybe because spring is coming, but it's odd. It's just so odd. And I think we have to be kind to ourselves and realize that we've been through something very strange, and that it's not over yet, but we can see that it will be over at some point in the foreseeable future. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. And then also, during this time, I've had a practice which I haven't followed as well as I'd like to, but I have. When you asked it to think of somebody who was a close friend, or who was somebody who we resonate with, or I forget exactly how you put it. There were like half a dozen or so people who I feel that way with, and I've been, as a practice, trying to call them somewhat regularly and just say hello and just talk for a little bit, and so how we take care of the web of Kalyana Mitra is a challenge, is a practice. It's something that requires our intention and attention. And anyway, I just really appreciate everything you said.
And, I think that you're making a very good point, Teigen. The person that I mentioned that kind of saved my life as a teenager, she passed away about, it's been 5 years, I think, now. She's about 13 years older than I am. And for when I was very young, we were in the same place, but for most of my adult life, all of my adult life, we didn't live anywhere near each other. And sometimes we didn't talk for a year or two. And then we would get on the phone, and it was as if we just picked up the conversation from where it was before. And so, those kinds of friendships are there, pandemic or no pandemic, right? So I think you're really right about the picking up the phone. And Teigen, I just want to say, you and I have kind of, our lives have kind of gone like this at various times. But I think that when we first met each other, when I was, probably late 20s at Green Gulch, and you were living there, I think we recognized something in each other of this kind of passion for, engaged Buddhism. And that's part of the reason that I'm here tonight, right? All those years later.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, there's something about that, and I think it happens within Sangha too, very much, that we recognize something in somebody else, or they recognize something in us. And what that is it's so mysterious. It's not necessarily, as you said, shared interests. It might be, but, or we could find the shared interest, but there's resonance. So we have still just a little bit of time, and I just want to ask if anybody else, maybe anybody who hasn't said anything yet, has any comments or responses or reflections. It's just wonderful to have Florence with us, and so please. Hogetsu, thank you.
Hello, Florence. It's nice to see you. I apologize for showing up late. The Doan forgot to ring the bell during my zazen before your talk. That Doan happened to be me. So spiritual friendship is a wonderful thing. So thank you for talking about it.
And, I realized I think I had my timing wrong. I actually thought I was supposed to end it at 8:30. So I'm pleased to see that I was wrong and we had more time. I could have told more stories had I known. But I also I've always found it very rich, both in person and over Zoom, to be in conversation with people in this Sangha. So grateful for that opportunity too. And you're muted again.
Thank you. And you will be back.
Yes.
But maybe now we can formally close. Wade, would you lead us with the 4 Bodhisattva vows, please?
I'm going to, maybe we don't need it, but I'm going to put it on the screen anyway. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.